The transport shuttle descended through the crimson clouds of Valyria Prime, and Captain Marcus Webb felt his stomach tighten with each passing kilometer. 20 years had passed since he last saw this world, since he last saw her. The planetary defense grid recognized his command codes immediately, parting like a curtain to allow his vessel through. Of course they would. She had been waiting. Marcus gripped the control yoke harder than necessary as the capital city came into view. Towers of crystalline metal stretched toward the dual suns, their surfaces reflecting light in patterns that would have seemed impossible by Earth standards. The Valyrians had always been ahead of humanity in architecture, in technology, in almost everything except one crucial area. They had needed Earth's help to survive. The communication panel chimed. Marcus reached over and accepted the transmission, knowing exactly who it'd be. Captain Webb. The voice that emerged from the speakers carried the weight of authority, but underneath it, he could still hear traces of the girl who used to chase him through the gardens of the diplomatic compound. Your landing coordinates have been transmitted. A royal escort awaits you. Understood, Your Majesty, Marcus replied, keeping his tone professional. He could almost feel her smile through the connection. After all this time, you still insist on formality. Queen Lyria's voice softened. I suppose some things never change, while others change completely. The line went silent, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts and the steady hum of the shuttle's engines. He had been 12 years old when his father, Ambassador Richard Webb, had been assigned to Valyria Prime. The planet had just made first contact with the Galactic Council, and Earth had been tasked with helping them navigate the complex political waters of interstellar diplomacy. Lyria had been 10, the youngest daughter of King Terran, unlikely ever to inherit the throne. She had 4 older siblings, all brilliant and capable. No one could have predicted the plague that would sweep through the royal family 15 years later, leaving only her alive. Marcus remembered their first meeting in the palace gardens. She had been hiding behind a fountain, crying because her tutors had scolded her for asking too many questions about Earth. He had offered her his handkerchief, and she had laughed at the primitive custom. They became inseparable after that, 2 lonely children in a world of diplomatic functions and political maneuvering, the summer before he left. When he was 17 and she was 15, they had sat together on the cliffs, overlooking the Amber Sea. The binary sunset had painted the sky in shades of purple and gold. She had been crying again, knowing his father's assignment was ending, knowing Marcus had been accepted into the Earth Space Academy. I wish you could stay, she had whispered. I wish I could too, he had replied, meaning it with every fiber of his being. Then marry me, she had said suddenly, turning to face him with those enormous violet eyes that seemed to hold entire galaxies. When we're older, come back and marry me. He had laughed, thinking it was a game, a fantasy to ease the pain of separation. All right, when we're older, I'll come back and marry you. She had made him swear it, placing his hand over her heart in the traditional Valyrian manner. He had felt the double beat of her cardiovascular system, so different from his own single pulse, and had sworn. Then he had left, joined the academy, and spent 20 years rising through the ranks of Earth's deep space fleet. He had thought about her often, but life had pulled him in 1,000 different directions. There had been border skirmishes with the Craven Collective, exploration missions to uncharted sectors, and the constant demands of military service. News of the plague had reached him 3 years ago. He had sent his condolences through official channels, never expecting a response. But 6 months later, after her coronation, she had sent a personal message. It had been brief, almost businesslike, asking about his career and his health. He had responded in kind, and a sporadic correspondence had developed. Then, 2 weeks ago, the summons had arrived. Not a request, but a formal royal summons requiring his presence on Valyria Prime. His superiors had been baffled, but compliant. One did not ignore a summons from the Queen of Valyria, especially given the planet's strategic importance to Earth's position in the Galactic Council. The shuttle touched down on the royal landing pad with barely a tremor. Marcus took a deep breath, checked his dress uniform one final time, and lowered the ramp. The air of Valyria Prime rushed in, carrying scents he had almost forgotten: night-blooming jasmine, ozone from the ionization fields, and something uniquely Valyrian that had no Earth equivalent. An honor guard stood at attention, their ceremonial armor gleaming in the afternoon light. At their head stood a woman in the deep blue robes of the royal household. She bowed as Marcus descended the ramp. "Captain Webb, Her Majesty awaits you in the Hall of Memories. If you would follow me." Marcus fell into step behind her, his military training keeping his face neutral even as his mind raced. The Hall of Memories was not a throne room or a formal reception area. It was a private gallery where the royal family kept their most treasured personal artifacts. He had been there only once before. On the day before he left Valyria. They walked through corridors, he remembered, past tapestries that depicted 1,000 years of Valyrian history. Servants and officials bowed as they passed, but Marcus barely noticed. His entire focus had narrowed to what awaited him at the end of this journey. The guide stopped before a set of carved wooden doors that seemed anachronistic among all the advanced technology surrounding them. "Her Majesty requested privacy for your reunion. You may enter when ready." Marcus nodded, waited for the woman to leave, then stood alone before the doors. His hand trembled slightly as he reached for the handle. This was absurd. He had faced down enemy warships, navigated diplomatic crises, and commanded hundreds of personnel under extreme pressure. Yet the thought of seeing Lyria again terrified him in a way nothing else ever had. He opened the door. The Hall of Memories was exactly as he remembered it. A long room with vaulted ceilings and walls lined with display cases. Afternoon light streamed through tall windows, illuminating floating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny stars. At the far end of the room, silhouetted against the light, stood a figure in simple white robes. "Hello, Marcus." Lyria turned, and he felt his breath catch. She was still beautiful, but the softness of youth had been replaced by something harder, more refined. Her violet eyes held depths that had not been there before, the weight of responsibility and loss etched into her features. The traditional crown of Valyrian queens rested on her head, a circlet of living crystal that pulsed faintly with her heartbeat. "Your Majesty," Marcus began. Bowing formally, "Stop that." She crossed the distance between them in swift strides. "In this room, we are not queen and captain. We are Lyria and Marcus, as we have always been." He straightened, meeting her gaze directly. "Lyria, then. You look well. Liar." She smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. "I look tired because I am tired. Ruling is not the adventure we imagined when we were children playing at court. I was sorry to hear about your family. The messages I sent seemed inadequate. They were adequate. They were also the only ones I read completely." She gestured to a display case nearby. "Do you remember this?" Marcus stepped closer and felt his heart skip. Inside the case, carefully preserved, was his handkerchief, the one he had given her that first day in the gardens. Beside it lay a small holographic projector, currently dormant. "You kept it. I kept everything." Lyria activated the projector, and suddenly the air filled with images. The two of them as children, laughing in the gardens. As teenagers, studying together in the library. The final image showed them on the cliffs, her hand over his heart, his face serious as he made his promise. "I need to explain why I summoned you," Lyria said, deactivating the display. "Valyria stands at a crossroads. The Galactic Council is fracturing. The Craven Collective grows bolder. My advisors tell me We must forge stronger alliances, and there is no stronger alliance than marriage between royal houses. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. You are engaged. No. Lyria turned to face him fully. I am calling in a promise made 20 years ago by a boy to a girl under a sunset that no longer exists for either of us. The world seemed to tilt. Lyria, we were children. That was not a binding oath. By Valyrian law, a promise made heart to heart is absolutely binding, she replied calmly. I checked, extensively. My legal advisors have confirmed it. You placed your hand over my heart and swore to marry me. I accepted your oath. The fact that you are human and were unaware of our customs does not invalidate the contract. Marcus struggled to process this. You cannot be serious. You are a queen. You need a political alliance, not a promise made by children who did not understand what they were doing. What I need, Lyria said, her voice hardening, is someone I can trust absolutely in a galaxy full of lies and manipulation. What I need is someone who sees me as Lyria, not as a crown or a strategic asset. What I need is my best friend. You need a partner who understands Valyrian politics and culture. I have advisors for that. I need a partner who will tell me the truth, even when it is difficult. Especially when it is difficult. She stepped closer, and Marcus could see the vulnerability beneath her regal composure. I am not asking you to love me, Marcus. I am asking you to keep a promise. Everything else we can negotiate. Marcus turned away, his mind racing through implications and consequences. Marriage to Lyria would mean leaving Earth's military, becoming consort to a queen, navigating political waters far more treacherous than any space battle. It would mean giving up the life he had built, the career he had devoted 2 decades to achieving. God, it would also mean keeping his word. The Galactic Council will see this as Earth gaining undue influence over Valyria, he said finally. Let them. My planet, my choice. Your advisors will revolt. Some already have. I dismissed them. This is madness. This is politics. Lyria moved to stand beside him, both of them now staring out the windows at the city beyond. I have spent 3 years doing what everyone else thought was best. Making compromises, forming alliances with people who smile while sharpening their knives. I am tired of it, Marcus. I want one thing in my life that is real, that is mine by right of a promise made when we were too young to know better, but honest enough to mean it. Marcus thought of that sunset, of the girl who had made him swear, of the boy who had agreed without understanding the weight of his words. He thought of duty and honor, concepts that had guided his entire adult life. He had sworn an oath to Earth's military, but he had sworn an oath to her first. I will need time, he said quietly. Time to resign my commission properly, to settle my affairs. Lyria's hand found his, her double pulse beating against his palm. I can give you time. Not much, but some. Will you stay on Valyria while you decide? Let me show you what our life could be. Marcus turned to face her, seeing both the queen and the girl he had known, understanding finally that they were the same person, just as he was both the boy who had made a promise and the man who must keep it. Yes, he said, I will stay. Her smile, when it came, was like the binary sunrise, transforming her features with genuine joy. Then perhaps this madness has method to it after all. As they stood together in the Hall of Memories, surrounded by the artifacts of a shared past, Marcus realized that some promises transcended time and distance and the complications of galactic politics. He had told a girl he would marry her, and now a queen held him to his word. The remarkable thing was, he discovered, he did not mind nearly as much as he should. Claude is AI and can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.